Hello everyone, IELTS Time is here with IELTS Writing Series. You're listening to Iman Dashtizadeh. In this video, I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about IELTS Writing Task 2. This video is divided into three main parts. In the first part, we're going to look at some general rules about IELTS Writing Task 2. In the second part, we're going to become familiar with different kinds of essays in IELTS Writing Task 2. And finally, we're going to learn how we should generally structure our IELTS Writing Task 2. Let's start with the first part, some general rules about IELTS Writing Task 2. Here are some things that you must do. Number one, you must write an essay. If you remember, for writing Task 1 academic, we must write a report. Here in Task 2, we must write an essay. We must write at least 250 words. If you write less than 250 words, you'll be penalized. But if you write more, that's okay. You need to write in paragraphs, just the same as writing Task 1. In Task 2, it's recommended to spend 40 minutes on the task, but Task 1 and Task 2 are given to you at the same time. Some of the students prefer to spend more time on Task 1 because they have more problems in that area. They have more issues with writing Task 1 and they usually find it more challenging. So most of the students prefer to spend 30 minutes on Task 1 and 30 minutes on Task 2. It's up to you, but make sure that you finish both tasks in 1 hour. Number 5, use academic English, that's written English. And number 6, avoid contractions such as doesn't, won't, didn't. Instead, write does not, will not, did not. And here are some things that you mustn't do. Number 1, you mustn't use informal English, that's a spoken English. So you can't use slangs, expressions, idioms, and other things alike. Now, let's move on to the second part of the video. Here, we want to become familiar with different kinds of essays. The essays that you are usually given in Task 2 can be simply put into 6 distinct categories. Number 1, opinion essays. Number 2, discussion essays. Number 3, advantage-disadvantage essays. Number 4, mixed or double question essays. Number 5, problem solution essays. And finally, number 6, cause and solution essays. In your real IELTS exam, you're given only one of them. But to make sure that you understand what they are and how you should write them, you need to become familiar with all of them. So let's move on to the third part of the video, talking about these different kinds of essays. Opinion essays, the first one. In your real IELTS exam, you're given a box like this for your writing Task 2. It has 6 different parts. The first part is at the top. It tells you that you are on Task 2. Then you have the time limit. It tells you that you should spend 40 minutes on this task. Then comes the topic in the middle of the box. This topic also has 2 parts. The first part is the premise. It introduces the topic. It tells you exactly what you need to write about. And then comes what to do with the premise. In opinion essays, in the what to do with the premise, they usually ask you one direct question, like, to what extent do you agree or disagree? You can either completely agree, disagree, or partially agree or disagree. Then here, reasons and examples. It tells you that you have to give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. And the last part is word limit. It tells you that you need to write at least 250 words. Number 2, discussion essays. So we have a box like this at the time of our exam. At the top, we are on Task 2, then we have the time limit, then we have the topic, the first part of the topic, premise. The second part of the premise is very important. The second part that tells you what to do with the premise is very important. And for discussion essays, you have an imperative sentence like discuss both these views and give your own opinion. So for discussion essays, you need to discuss both views because in the premise, two viewpoints are introduced. You need to first discuss both of these viewpoints and then finally give your own opinion. Then give reasons and examples, and finally the word limit. Number 3, advantage disadvantage essay. So we have the box, you're on task 2, you have the time limit, you have the topic in the middle, you have the premise at the beginning, and then in the part that tells you what to do with the premise, you have a question that asks you to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the premise. Here we have what are the benefits and disadvantages for tourists who visit such places. Then you have reasons and examples, and finally the word limit. Number 4, mixed or double question essays. We have a box like this. At the top, you're on task 2, you have the time limit, then the topic in the middle, the premise, and what to do with the premise usually contains 2 questions. We call it a 2-question essay or a double question essay only because there are 2 questions. We call it a mixed essay because these 2 questions usually talk about sometimes, for example, opinion essays or discussion essays or advantage disadvantage essays or problem solution essays. In other words, these 2 questions are a mix of other kinds of essays. Here, how might having a lot of money make people happy? And then, what other things in life can make people happy? At the end, you have reasons, examples, and then finally, the word limit. Number 5, problem solution essays. We have a box like this. At the top, you're on task 2, then you have the time limit, the topic in the middle, the premise, and 2 questions. In the what to do with the premise for problem solution essays, again, there are 2 questions. The first question asks you to talk about the problems, while the second question asks you to talk about the solutions. Here, what problems we'll discuss for individuals and society? Question 1. Suggest some measures that could be taken to reduce the impact of aging populations. Part 2. This is not a question here, but it is usually in a question form. This part is more like an imperative sentence, but usually for problem solution essays, you have 2 questions. Reasons and examples, and then finally, word limit. Number 6, the last kind of essay that we have for this video. You're on task 2 here. Time limit, the topic in the middle, premise, and then what to do with the premise has 2 questions. It is exactly the same as problem solution, but the first question, instead of asking you to talk about the problems, asks you to talk about the causes, like why is this the case? And then question 2, solutions, what can be done about this problem? Then you have reasons, examples, and word limit. Now, how should we generally structure our IELTS writing task 2? Well, to get a higher score, it's usually recommended to write 4 paragraphs. So the first paragraph would be your introduction, the second paragraph would be your body, the third one your body 2, and the fourth paragraph is your conclusion. But for some kinds of essays, not always, you need to write 3 bodies. So instead of 2 bodies, we need to have 3 bodies. So we have the introduction, 3 bodies, and then conclusion. All right. To support IELTS Time, please make sure that you follow our Instagram pages, IELTS Time and Iman-Tizadeh. The second one is my personal page. Make sure that you follow our channels on Telegram. There are 2. One focus on IELTS tests and IELTS exam in general. And the second one is focused on general English. You can also follow my personal page on Facebook. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stay tuned. You're listening to Iman-Tizadeh.